Good morning, children. Today's topic is world's most amazing natural phenomena. First is Baltic and North Seas meet. It's an amazing natural phenomenon in the Skagen city, northernmost point of Denmark, where two seas meet. The two opposing tides cannot merge because they have different densities. The Baltic Sea and the North Sea meet at same point and causes a line of white foam to appear on the surface of the water. Let's listen to this video.
You might think that they just flow into each other. It seems like there's only one big ocean, and people just gave different names to its parts. Well, you'll be amazed how vivid the borders between them are. The border between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans is like a line between two worlds. It's as if the two oceans meet at an invisible wall which does not let them flow into each other and mix their waters. Why on earth does it happen? We know for sure there is no invisible wall inside, and water is water. What could interfere with its mixing? The thing is that water can be different too. The Atlantic and Pacific Oceans have different density and chemical makeup, the level of salinity and other qualities. One can see by their color that they are far from being the same. The borders between the two bodies of water with different physical and biological characteristics are known as ocean clines. Haloclines, borders between waters with different salinity, are the most spectacular, and this is what we see when the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans meet. The famous explorer Jacques Cousteau found this when he was deep diving in the Straits of Gibraltar. The layers of water with different salinity looked like they were divided with a transparent film, and each layer had its own flora and fauna. Haloclines appear when the water in one ocean or sea is at least 5 times saltier than in the other. You can create a halocline at home if you pour some seawater or colored salty water in a glass and then add some fresh water on top of it. The only difference is that your halocline will be horizontal, and ocean haloclines are vertical. If you remember a couple of basic things from physics, you might argue that a denser liquid should finally end up lower and less dense higher. If that were true, the border between the two oceans would look not like a vertical line but as a horizontal one, and the difference between their salinity would become less obvious the closer they got to each other. So why doesn't it happen here? Well, first, the difference in density of water of the two oceans is not that great for one of them to get down and the other to rise up, and yet it's enough to not let them mix. Still, another reason is inertia. One of the inertial forces known as the Coriolis force influences objects when they are moving in the system of axes, which, in its turn, is moving too. In simpler words, the Earth is moving, and all the moving objects on it will be acted upon by Coriolis force, deviating from their course. As a result, the objects on the Earth's surface don't move straight on, but deviate in clockwise order in the northern hemisphere and counterclockwise in the southern. But the Earth is moving slowly. It takes a planet a whole day to make a full circle around its axis. That's why the Coriolis effect gets obvious only in long time intervals, with cyclones and ocean flows. And this is why the direction of flows in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans is different. It also doesn't let them mix. Another important difference between the two oceans' water is the strength of molecules' connection, or surface tensile strength. Thanks to this strength, molecules of a matter hold on to each other. The two oceans have a totally different surface tensile strength, and it also doesn't let them mix. Maybe they could gradually start mixing with time, but as the flows in them have opposite directions, they just don't have time to do this. We think that it's just water in both oceans, but its separate molecules meet for just a short moment and then get carried away with the ocean flow. Don't you think, though, that only the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans don't get on well with each other? There are a lot of places on the planet where water in the two seas or rivers doesn't mix. There are also thermoclines, borders between water of different temperatures, like the warm water of the Gulf Stream and much colder North Atlantic Ocean. Chemoclimes are the most amazing ones. These are borders between waters having different microclimate and chemical makeup. The Sargasso Sea is the biggest and most widely known chemocline. It is a sea within the Atlantic Ocean, which has no shores, but you've got no chance not to notice it. Let's have a look at some other spectacular clines on the planet. 1. The North and Baltic Seas. These two seas meet near the Danish city of Skagen. The water in them does not mix because of different density. Sometimes you can see the waves of the two seas clash into each other, making foam. And yet their water mixes gradually. That's why the Baltic Sea is slightly saline. If there had been no water coming to it from the North Sea, it would have been a huge freshwater lake. 2. The Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. They meet at the Strait of Gibraltar and have a different density and salinity, so their water does not mix too. 3. The Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. The place where they meet is near the Antilles, and it looks like someone has painted water with different shades of blue. Another place where these two meet is the Eleuthera Island of the Bahamas. The Caribbean seawater is turquoise, and the Atlantic Ocean water is dark blue. Number 4. The Suriname River and the Atlantic Ocean meet near Paramaribo in South America. 5. The Uruguay River and its afflux. These two meet in Misiones province in Argentina. One of them is clean to be used in agriculture, and the other gets almost red because of loam during rainy seasons. 6. The Rio Negro and Solimões rivers, part of the Amazon River. 6 miles from Manaus in Brazil, Rio Negro and Solimões rivers run into each other, but don't mix for about 2.5 miles. The Rio Negro is dark and Solimões light. They have a different temperature and speed of flow. 7. Moselle and Rhine. They meet at Koblenz, Germany. Rhine has lighter water and Moselle darker. 8. Ilz, Danube, and Inn. The junction of these three rivers is in Passau, Germany. Ilz is a small mountain river to the left, the Danube is in the middle, and Inn is the light river to the right. Inn is wider than the Danube here, but still is its afflux. 9. Alaknanda and Bhagirathi rivers meet in India. Alaknanda is dark and Bhagirathi is light. 10. Irtush and Ulba flow into each other in Kazakhstan near the city whose name you'll never be able to pronounce, nor will I. You give it a shot. The Irtysh has clean water and Ulba cloudy. Number 11. The Jialing and Yangtze rivers meet in Chongqing, China. The Jialing is clean and the Yangtze is brown. 12. Irtysh and Om. These two rivers flow into each other in Omsk, Russia. The Irtysh is cloudy and the Om pure and transparent. 13. Chuya and Katun rivers meet in the Altai Republic, Russia. The water of the Chuya has an unusual cloudy white color here and looks dense and thick. Katun is clean and turquoise. Flowing into each other, they form a single two-colored flow that does not mix for some time. 14. The Green and Colorado rivers. The place of their junction is Canyonlands National Park in Utah, USA. Colorado is brown and green is, green. The colors of these rivers go through rocks with different chemical makeup. That's why they have such a big contrast of colors. 15. The Rhone and Arve rivers. They flow into each other in Geneva, Switzerland. The Rhone is a pure river that flows out of the Lake of Geneva. The Arve is cloudy as it gets its water from the glaciers of the Chamonix Valley.
The second is moving stones. It's a heavy rocks that have the ability to move many yards at a time without any external force. Secondly, different rocks move at different speeds and in different directions. The movement of the rocks occurs where large sheets of ice a few millimeters thick and floating in an ephemeral winter pond wakes up on sunny days.
For years, enormous stones have been moving across the racetrack playa of Death Valley National Park, leaving engraved trails in the muddy surface behind. No one understood how, though there were a bunch of speculations. And now a group of scientists say the mystery has been solved. A team led by paleobiologist Richard Norris from University of California, San Diego, decided to monitor a set of test rocks that were deliberately placed on the lake bed in the winter of 2001. The rocks were watched remotely using a high-resolution weather station, and they were watched for a long time because the stones can sit for more than a decade without moving. Norris said in a release that the team expected to wait for 5 or 10 years without anything moving, but around the end of 2013, the rocks began moving. Okay, I just gotta say, best job ever. Getting paid waiting around for rocks to move. Not trying to downplay the significance of this finding, but can you imagine how the funding process went? Yeah, we need a bunch of money to fund this project. We're gonna go monitor rocks and see if they move. Probably take us like, only 5 to 10 years. In December 2013, researchers discovered that the playa was covered with a pond of water about 7 centimeters deep. Rock movement occurred shortly after. The team was able to chronicle a set of events that set the rocks in motion. First, the playa fills with water that must be deep enough to form floating ice, but shallow enough to expose the rocks. When nighttime temperatures dip, the pond forms thin sheets of ice which can move freely, but are thick enough to maintain strength. Then when the sun comes out, the ice melts and breaks up into large floating panels, and light winds drive these ice panels across the lake bed, pushing the rocks in front of them and leaving trails in the soft mud. Rocks moved under light winds at about 3 to 5 meters per minute by ice that was only 3 to 5 millimeters thick. The rocks remained in motion for a few seconds to 16 minutes. Researchers say they observed some rocks traveling more than 60 meters in one motion. Because they only used small test rocks, the scientists say they can't be 100% sure about their theory since they haven't observed how the bigger, heavier rocks moved.
The third is ice circles. This natural phenomenon occurs in extremely cold places. The slow-moving water of the river breaks the ice and twists it around. As the ice disk rotates, it grinds against the surrounding ice, forming a circular shape.
Windberry Creek, Oregon, December 11th, 2009.
Man, that is just amazing.
This is just one example of a rare phenomenon, ice circles. When the weather conditions are just right, these rotating icy formations are made in rivers anywhere from Canada to England. The weather must be perfectly balanced. Cold enough for ice to form, but not so cold that the whole river freezes. And there must be just enough rainfall to set the river flowing at the right speed. But it seems incredible that nature can make such perfect circles. Ice circles are a rare and beautiful example of natural geometry in action.
The fourth is firewall. This rare natural phenomenon occurs when fire under certain conditions of air currents and temperature creates a tornado-like effect. A firewall is a whirlwind induced by a fire and often composed of flame or ash. These start with a whirl of wind, often made visible by smoke, and may occur when intense rising heat and turbulent wind conditions combine to form whirling eddies of air. one is penitentius. This natural phenomenon happens only in places like China and Argentina. The tall, thin blades of hardened snow are formed because of the strong winds in Andes Mountains.
One such spectacle is the penitentes, which are naturally formed spiky ice and snow formations. They give the appearance of a white forest and resemble rough blades. The formations vary in size from just a few inches tall up to 17 feet high. The fields of white blades reside in a section of the Andes in between Argentina and Chile, which is more than 13,000 feet above sea level. These formations usually develop in groups or clusters. Charles Darwin first described the penitentes in the 1800s following one of his travel ventures. According to him, the locals thought the ice spikes formed due to the strong winds in the area. However, recent studies suggest that blades are actually formed when the sun's rays transform snow into water vapor prior to melting it. The process is called sublimation. Deep depressions are formed in the snow, which leave high points in the surface, giving the appearance of tall blades or spikes.
The sixth one is red tides. This natural phenomenon is caused by the rapid growth of algae. The water appears red due to the massive amount of algae.
What causes red tides? Why crimson seas are not as unbelievable a sight as you might first think. A red tide is the rapid accumulation of a mass of aquatic algae made up of mobile single-celled microorganisms known as dinoflagellates, which means whirling whip due to the nature of the tail-like projections that propel them through the water. The algae grows or blooms more rapidly than usual in order to consume nutrients that have suddenly risen up from the colder depths of the ocean below. The red hue is down to the presence of a certain species of dinoflagellate or phytoplankton. Together with the more abundant diatom algae, dinoflagellates make up the majority of ocean plankton. Despite the rather startling appearance of a sea that has been turned red, many algal blooms are actually completely harmless. However, you shouldn't consume seafood following a red tide. A certain phytoplankton can release harmful substances into the water. Some dinoflagellates can produce toxins when eaten by other creatures, and the harmful substances then concentrate inside the creatures that feed on them, and subsequently any humans who go on to dine on the contaminated seafood. The billions of microscopic dinoflagellates in a red tide can also cause spectacular bioluminescence at night. One species in particular, the Linguladinium polyedrum, can create its own light from within. When the organism is jostled or collides with something in the ocean, a chemical reaction occurs when an enzyme called luciferase and a substance called luciferin, both contained within the organism, combine. This is the catalyst for a chemical reaction that releases a flash of blue light. When this occurs millions of times simultaneously, the effect is quite remarkable for onlookers.
Thank you, children.